2, 1, and we're live. Hey, hello everybody. Welcome back to Wheel Talk. Hello, Brittany.
Hello, Fred.
Would you rather die than be disabled? Now that is a juicy, provocative title, ladies and gents. Just to give you a little bit of background, a couple of weeks ago, Brittany said, I'll do the thumbnails and titles because you do all the other stuff. And I was like, all right, great. And then last week it was, are disabled people allowed to have kids? And this week, would you rather die than be disabled? So talk about clickbait and provocative titles. You've been nailing it, mate. So
it's only clickbait if you don't talk about it.
Well, I'm sure it's grabbed some people's attention.
Yeah, no, I try, but these are questions that I want people to think about, and I hope that they click on the episode to hear us talk about it, right?
Yeah. Disabled? Have you thought about death?
Yeah, exactly. It's a funny question, but it's also very serious. So I can't wait to talk about it.
It's a beautiful title. It's fantastic. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, amazing. That's why you've got 26,000 subscribers or more. I don't know, but yeah.
Maybe. Or maybe it's because there's way more creepy men than creepy women. So
yeah,
there's a lot of men
find your pee hole.
Yeah, exactly. So then they pushed out my content to the masses. But yeah. So how was your week?
Yeah, on that subject, I've been in touch with a devotee.
Oh,
yeah,
that's another good topic.
Yeah, well, I've asked him a few questions, and hopefully I can get him to. Well, he's opened up about a lot so far, but I was unprepared to talk about this topic, but that was just it messaged me on Instagram. He said, by the way, I'm a devotee and I'm open if you want to ask any questions. And I've asked him a few so far, and it was great.
We should definitely talk about that next time because it is a very interesting topic. And I think it's one that, is a little interesting, but also has a really bad sort of stigma around it. So I think it's a good thing to talk about.
100%. Yeah. One of the questions I did ask him was, how old were you when you first realized that you were attracted to disability? And he said very, very young. He said probably about 8 years old. He said, before I realized I was gay, I knew that I was attracted to disability. And then I said, is it from a caretaker perspective or is it like a sexual thing? And he said, it's both. So I'm interested to keep probing because just out of curiosity, I don't want to, I know that devotees get a bad rep, but I'm really interested why people are attracted and what it is about the attraction. Blah, blah, blah.
Me too. I've definitely talked to a few of them, and it's next time when we talk about it, I'll share what they've said to me. But it's and I think it's different for every devotee because they all have different sort of kinks and fetishes and things that make them attracted to the person with a disability. But yeah, it's a good topic. We should talk about that for sure next time.
But for now, would you rather die than be disabled? Why have you called the episode that?
I call the episode that because I've been recently watching a lot of news sort of clips on the implications of the MAID program that we have here in Canada, which is medical assistance in dying. And in 2016, when it changed, the stipulations changed essentially for how easy it is in order to access this program. There was 1,000 people that used the program in 2016, and last year 13,000 people used the program, and it now accounts for 4% of all deaths in Canada. It is the highest growing medically assisted dying program in the world in Canada. And so there's a lot to be sort of said about this topic here in Canada in terms of the regulations, how easy it is to get, the types of things that make you eligible, what constitutes, a reasonable, because I think you have to have some sort of prove that you are going to reasonably die earlier than other people of whatever it is that you have. And so it's just an interesting topic because I know for sure I've talked to a few people that work in the hospital system, and there's been a few really high level quadriplegics that were injured that opted for that before they even left acute care. So they weren't even in rehab yet, and they just they did it. And the fastest you can get approved here in Canada is 8 days.
What? That's crazy.
8 days. So it's not even like, you're going through, you have to wait 6 months and see how you feel, get medically assessed in 6 months after you've had some mental health interventions or anything like that. Like 8 days, like that's crazy, and obviously if
Yeah.
somebody hasn't even left acute care and they're a high level quadriplegic, they haven't even been like a month into their disability. They don't know what their life is going to look like. And so I thought it would be a really good conversation to have just about whether it's a reasonable and what like the word I'm looking for, where it's like it allows people to have autonomy over their life, whether it's reasonable for people to choose death rather than disability, or whether it's ridiculous. And I don't know. And I don't know if it's as black and white as I'm trying to make it out to be, but what do you think? I don't know. Let's hear your thoughts on it.
Fascinating. I love these conversations. You bring up such great topics. I think if 8 days is all that you have, I don't think I'd be here right now. Because when I was in my early stages of acute, paraplegia, I was like, I don't want to live like this. I've gone from being an elite level snowboarder, very active mountain biker, a busy chef in a kitchen, like all my identity was tied to that. I was like, I don't want to be a wheelchair guy. I don't want to be a cripple in a wheelchair. If I had have only known, I would have blossomed into this wheelchair ninja that I absolutely love my life. I would never have known. 8 days is nuts. I think I would have taken it. And that sounds really sad. I'm sure like there would have been family members that would have tried to talk me out of it and stuff, but I don't know. I think that's really sad. I mean, I'm only coming from the place of my disability, and I know that being a high level quadriplegic is a lot more challenging, but there are loads of high level quadriplegics that are very, very happy and very content, and they do wonderful things, and a lot of things come back. You get a lot of feeling back and movement back, and you meet other people in the community, and I think that's crazy. 8 days. I mean, and I can't believe it's taken like now 4% of all deaths are medically assisted suicide.
Yeah, and I don't know why we're not looking at this as like a bigger problem, like a bigger mental health problem in Canada, instead of just, nobody's even they're starting to talk about this now that the data has come out and how crazy the increase is in the usage of this program. But I think it's a huge topic because I wouldn't be here either. Like I
Mm,
wasn't old enough to obviously make that decision for myself when I was hurt. And I wasn't suicidal for sure, but I definitely prayed many, many nights not to wake up like, okay, I'm done. Like, I've had a good life. This is great. I'm ready for the next one. And my friend Tash, who's a high level quadriplegic, she says that a lot too. Like some nights she goes to bed and is like, okay, God, on to the next one, on to the next one, like when she's just had a really challenging day. But then she has an amazing day, 2 days later, and she has a toddler that's awesome. And so I think that it allows people to make a decision in their darkest times without allowing them to crawl back out of, the holes that we all inevitably get in. And because it's so easy to get now, and I think the people who are authorizing these programs are able bodied people who are probably healthy, they're not sick people. So they're all thinking to themselves, like, yeah, I understand. This is reasonable to me from my position.
mm,
But when you are in somebody else's position and you have gone through the struggle and you've made it through on the other side, it isn't reasonable because you're like, I made it through. If you have addiction, and it is reasonable for some people. I'm not saying it's not reasonable for anybody at all, but I think that the people who, like I said, are authorizing it don't have the kind of perspective necessary to decide for somebody that's struggling. And I don't think that they give them enough time or enough options in order to help them manage the negative emotions. I can see if you're like dying of cancer and you have like a month to live and you're in pain and it's awful. But disability is to me kind of
mm.
a different story. And I just think it's a sad sort of alternative that's being exercised by a lot of people instead of learning to live a potentially amazing life with a lot of challenges.
Absolutely. I think overcoming the struggles that I've faced being disabled have been so insanely rewarding for me. And like this, it's the whole saying that struggle makes you stronger, right? I feel so much stronger now. Maybe I'm physically less capable, but I'm stronger mentally. I'm stronger physically in my upper body, at least. And I don't know, I'm fit and healthy. Like I haven't drunk alcohol since my accident. So I've been like 5.5 years sober. I eat healthy. I've found romance after relationship. And we've spoken about how relationships after spinal cord injury are a lot stronger than the ones before that can be based on more fickle things. You've got to see through, if someone wants to see through your disability, then they really like love you a bit more. And there's so many wonderful things. I've heard it described as a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I did a series on my YouTube channel about my suicidal diary entries. And I read them out from a place of, I was like, this is how I felt a few months ago. And now I'm really happy. So just so everyone could get the idea of me reading them, I was reading my deepest, darkest thoughts from 3 months earlier. And I was like, if I felt like I was going to kill myself 3 months ago. I was so stupidly depressed. And 3 months later, I'm like really, really happy I didn't do that. So that's the reason for me sharing such intimate details of my suicidal diary entries, because I thought if you feel this way right now, it's likely that you won't feel that way 3 months, 6 months. And like I say, if you do something that you might, well, I guess you don't live to regret it, but it's quite often the case that you'll look back and be like, oh, I'm glad I didn't do that because, I don't feel that way any longer.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem is that, then I love that. I love the way you just put that it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, because I truly believe that most of life's problems are temporary unless they're, terminal and you have an illness that will definitely take your life. That's a permanent problem, and a permanent solution to a permanent problem is probably reasonable. But I think most of the time it's temporary angst or anxiousness or depression or anger or whatever it is that people are just like the discomfort is just too much, and they they make a permanent solution to that, which I think is really sad. Because like we've talked about this before, when you look at happiness after a spinal cord injury, it does definitely depend on your happiness before a spinal cord injury, but it also kind of goes back to like your set point before you were paralyzed, and it just takes like about a year. And I think that no matter what your level of injury is, you'll find a way to be content most of the time. Because I know a lot of people with disabilities that struggle, and I know a lot of people that are, like, we've called them whiners before, but that's sort of like a bad way to say it, I guess. But they just have a lot to complain about. But I don't know a lot of people that are suicidal as people with disabilities any more than there are people in the regular population, at least in my own life. So yeah, I think it's just a sad solution that people are exercising.
I'd like to steel man the other side of the argument as much as possible for balance, but I can imagine a scenario where, like, in fact, there was a high profile assisted suicide recently of a young British lady who was paraplegic. Did you hear about that?
No.
Yeah, she was into like horse riding. I think she got injured horse riding, and she, again, from the outside, she looked pretty good. She had one of those like Segway wheelchairs, like really like a very fancy wheelchair. She was photographed next to a horse. She looked like she came from a wealthy family. I'm just trying to paint the picture here. I'm not trying to judge, but she decided to go down the medically assisted suicide route, and with the blessing of her family. And at first I was like, what the hell? Like, are you kidding me? Like, why? You're a paraplegic, and there's so many other paraplegics that live full lives. I think a lot of it left a really sore, like a little sore, what's the word I'm looking for? Bad taste in the mouths of people that live wonderful lives after paraplegia. And we were like, oh, that's such a cop out. It was not as if she was newly injured. She'd been injured a while. However, and I thought about it, and at first of all, I had this distaste, and I was just like, I don't agree with that. But then I realized, what if she was desperately depressed? really missed her old life, and she expressed the sentiment to her family, I'm going to kill myself, and you either find my dead body somewhere and it's going to be really unpleasant, or you all get on board and we do this together. And I remember thinking, well, if it was phrased that way, I've made up my mind. There's no, I've been in therapy, blah, 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 and I've made this decision. Please respect my decision. Let's do this together, and let's celebrate the end of my life. I can kind of see how her family would get behind it. Like, if you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do it anyway. Let's do it the proper way. And that's the only real way I can kind of see it happening. I guess through, again, therapy, and there's loads of things you need to go through first before making that decision. But I understand why some people can make that decision.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I do get the headspace that people make that decision from. And I think that, like, given, a situation where you have extreme chronic pain or something, that seems very reasonable to me, where like your daily existence is really hard. I know somebody that, like, I chatted back and forth with, I don't know them personally, but in my email, that has chronic incontinence, and like nothing they ever do is fixing it. And it's like everyday diarrhea, like 4 times a day, and incontinent diarrhea. So it was just brutal. Like the amount of time they spent cleaning themselves up, and the amount of like anxiety they had going out of the house, and just all of that stuff. And they weren't suicidal, so they were dealing with it. But I can see if somebody was in that situation where there was just like obstacles that made everyday life experiences much less enjoyable, and hard to find gratitude for. So I get that. But as a person with a disability, I just don't want anybody to ever think that right in the beginning. Or I don't want them to do it in the beginning before they like figure it out. And I think I don't so much as have a problem with the program, because I think it is a compassionate program that allows people to have personal autonomy over their death, and especially if their death is imminent or inevitable. I just feel like it's something that needs to have a little bit more safeguards for how long people are accessing therapy for, and how well we support them when we find out that they're struggling in this way. So yeah, maybe it's a conversation starter. Maybe it's one of those things that we have to be like, whoa, the pendulum swung way too far this way. Because I think a lot of people are even using it for like poverty. Like
What?
that, yeah, like there's been people here that there's a girl that it's in a wheelchair, and she has no problem with her life. She has 3 kids and stuff, but the province that she lives in, it's harder to get disability supports in terms of like income supports than it is to get this MAID program. And she's saying that that's how awful it is, that the government will help you die before they'll help you live. And so she's like struggling because she's a high level quadriplegic, and she has a hard time. She works, and she just has a hard time making ends meet, and she can't get the kind of income support she needs in order to support her and her family. So
wow.
yeah,
That's crazy.
That's what she said. She was like, my kids would be better off dead with my life insurance than.
Oh my God, that's such an awful decision to make. Oh my God.
Awful.
They're like, and the paperwork, being disabled, have you tried filling out the paperwork? Christ, kill me now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's awful. Like, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. That is so interesting, because now it makes me think there might be a nefarious twist to this, because disabled people probably cost the taxpayer a fair bit. And they're like, hey, if you want to, just, it will save us all a few bucks, like, and that would be awful.
That's awful.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if you've got limited resources. If you're on a desert island, I can understand it, but like not in a modern country like Canada, where that is wild. That is absolutely wild.
Well, with our current government, I wouldn't doubt that is, the nefarious, underwritten like intention.
Yeah, that's nuts. So I would say, like, without even the medically assisted suicide, everyone has the right to take their own life at any time. Like even this is actually really dark, so apologies to my mum, but I've even thought about like the ways that my life will end in the future, and I still think that suicide could be up there. You never know. Like when we said about if the power goes out and never comes back on, if there's some global cataclysm and like resources are, I'm not in the sort of place that like of surviving in the woods without modernity. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That sounds a bit dark, but like my point is, because I've been there, I've always thought like it's an option, like, but not right now. My life's great, but like I don't know. But my point is, there's like making that decision on your own, and many people take their lives every day, and that's their decision. And because I've been there, I try not to judge it too much, but at the same time encouraging people, being like, hey, if you really want to, you can do it, legally, just fill out this paperwork and within 8 days you'll be approved, and we'll do it nice and painlessly. And I just feel like I don't know, I've got mixed feelings about that, because I guess if you are going to do it, you'd want to do it, I don't know, like I'm baffled. I'm kind of lost for words,
It's one of those ones where it's like, it's a hard conversation to have because you understand it. You absolutely do. You can see why people do it, how they make that decision, but you also don't want that to be, it would be sad it's sad for me to imagine that that's somebody's existence or their headspace where they go, this is it for me and I'm okay with that. But I've been there, you've been there, and I'm sure that there's going to be many more people there. Yeah, it's just one of those hard conversations. And it sounds like, people have opinions in the comments. So it's definitely something that is touching a nerve in society right now.
Exactly.
And we'll see where it goes.
The thing is, like I say, I think everyone has the right to end their own life, like at any time, like, but at the same time, when it comes to disability specifically, it just for me, it's just so close, because I was so close to doing it myself, and then my life turned out better than I could have ever imagined. So, and I know that's not the case for everyone. Like, for example, I don't suffer from fecal incontinence, although I do have a funny anecdote coming up.
That's like a good segue.
I don't suffer from fecal incontinence or any sort of other incontinence apart from weeing myself every now and then. I don't suffer from debilitating nerve pain. My spasms are a pain in the ass, but I've got them under control. But imagine if I had chronic spasticity, crushing nerve pain, covered in shit like all the time. I think, there would probably be a time where I'd be like, well, this is a miserable existence. And I don't know. I think there's ways of getting that under control though. You've got like, I don't know. I think what struck me, and I do want to segue away from this, but like what struck me is when you said people are being approached in the early stages of disability and given 8 days. I'm like, that, I mean, if that's true, that just,
well, I don't know if they're being approached. Like, I think people probably have to know that the program exists and seek it out. Like, I don't think they're being like told this is an option. So I don't think that is a thing, but I do believe that they are allowed to, before even like going into a rehabilitation setting, access the program. And that's really scary to me. But yeah, I don't know, like, cause hospitals are compassionate care and they're client-centered care. Like, that's our model here in Canada, is client-centered care. So whatever the client needs and wants, essentially the hospital nursing staff and everything tries to accommodate. So I don't know that you could tell somebody who said, this is what I want to do. I don't think that they have the ability to sort of be like, no, we're not going to allow you to do that, because we have the autonomy thing where if you're an adult, you have the autonomy to make your own decisions about your life. And if you choose that this is your decision, a doctor can sign off and say that you are medically or psychologically sane enough to make this decision. But apart from that, I don't know that there's anything that they can do. I just wish that there was like more supports for people and more, because I think the doctors are bound by what the legislation says. And the legislation basically says they have to do this medical assessment about your psychological state, whether you're able to actually make this decision of sound mind. And then after they get 2 psychological assessments for this, then it's just a bunch of other paperwork from other doctors and things like that to sort of get the ball fully rolling. But without the actual legislation changing to say that this psychological assessment has to happen on this date and another psychological assessment has to happen 6 months later, and in between time you have to access this much, or we'll give you this many, you know, mental health sort of intervention treatments. But it's not like that. I don't think the legislation is like that. So I think the doctors and the healthcare providers are just as bound by the legislation, you know, as the people administering the actual like drugs to allow people to die. Because they probably hate the program too. They're just, they're supposed to psychologically assess people that they're of sound mind. And if they're of sound mind, then they have the autonomy to make decisions about their own lives. So it's like, there's a whole bunch of messed up things. And I just think the change in the legislation is what is the problem.
That sounds like a much more balanced solution, the one that you just suggested, and much more common sense as well. You know, you'd think that common sense would prevail, like, but anyway, I don't really know the answer, but I did say that to you guys that I had a funny story about shitting myself.
Let's move into that. Let's move into the challenges of living a life with a disability.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the challenge. So I went to a wedding at the weekend, and it was a beautiful, beautiful wedding. It was 2 of my dear friends, Max and Jerv, got married, and it was a wonderful occasion. And as always, when I go to like these things, if someone says get there at 2:00, I want to get there at 1:30 because I want to, you know, it's always nice to arrive early. So anyway, about 1:30, I did a poo early in the morning, and I thought that I was completely empty, and I was like, okay, excellent. And again, I don't have a track record of fecal incontinence, so I'm very confident, but I do occasionally do a looby fart. So I was like, okay, I feel like, you know, there's something brewing down there. I need to get on the toilet, because if it is a looby fart, I'm already in my suit, you know. So I went to the toilet, and lo and behold, like poo-mageddon. I couldn't believe it. There was an enormous amount of poo. And I was like, how? Like, it was hands-free. You know what I mean? I didn't even have to stimulate my bum. And I was like, no way. I was like, I've just dodged a bullet.
The shit bullet,
yeah, like imagine that happening at the wedding. Imagine like posing for a wedding photo. Oh my God, it would have been the worst, the absolute worst. And I know this happens to people on a daily basis. So if it happens to you, I empathize with you. I sympathize with you. It must be awful. But for me, I dodged it. But at the same time, I also had like explosive diarrhea on the toilet, and I had to really make sure I was completely empty before going to the wedding, because then I was like, oh my God, you know what I mean? I got trigger happy bumhole. I don't want to be like, you know, squirting around the bloody wedding, you know? So I wanted
God.
So in the end, I was late, and I've got I had to bring a tripod. I had to bring a tripod to Jerv's wedding. And because he wanted to film it for his dad that couldn't be there. So I was late with the tripod. The ceremony had already started. I felt like a right idiot. But at least I didn't shit myself, which was like the best thing ever.
Did you explain to him that you had a shit situation?
I said to him, I'm really sorry I'm late, pal. Like, I'll explain to you another time, but I've got a really good excuse. He's like, no worries. It was his wedding day. He wasn't bothered. He was like, oh, whatever, it's fine, you know. But it was a great wedding, and it was just, I don't know, these things.
That's the worst or the best. It's not, you don't know whether it's the best or the worst, but yeah, I had a situation like that once when I was going on a road trip, and we were like driving, almost leaving like the city. And I was like, something is going on down there. So my sister was like, no, it's fine. I'm like, no, we need to go home. Went home, same thing, sat on the toilet, massive diarrhea. And if I had not gone home, then I would have shit my pants in the car in the middle of nowhere, because we would have been like an hour out of the city, nowhere to clean up. Everybody would have been in the car with me because my sister's boyfriend was in there. It was like awful. And so I was like so thankful that my sister turned around. And then obviously, again, we were late getting to where we needed to be by like a couple hours. But I was so glad that we were late and I had not shit my pants in the car, because that would have been awful. And funnily enough, like my friend, recently shit his pants in the car with a tow truck driver because
Oh,
he blew a tire on the road, and he transferred into the tow truck, and he shit his pants mid-transfer. And
no.
so he had to ride in the car with the tow truck driver, smelling the shit. And I was like, "Did
No.
you say anything?" And he was like, "Nope. I just sat there, super uncomfortable, and then got out, and it was awful, like horrible." And the tow truck driver is probably like, "I'm pretty sure this guy shit his pants."
Yeah.
But like he wouldn't say anything. So that was like awful. He was like, "Yeah, it was the worst day ever." And then when he got to work, his buddy lent him his car so he could go home, change his pants, and like it was awful. Like he was just like, "I didn't even have my vehicle when I got to work. Like I just got the guy to take me to work," and it was
Yeah.
terrible.
Oh my God. So Brian Kinney told me a funny story recently. I really hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, but it's funny. He said he took his daughter out for ice cream, and as they got out the car, he shit himself. And again, it doesn't happen often. He's like, oh God. But his daughter's there and she wants ice cream. And he said that to his wife, like, that apparently they'd been, I don't know, his wife is I guess, takes care of, he was supposed to be giving his wife a break.
Yeah, a break.
So he's like, I'll take her out for ice cream. We'll be gone for a few hours. And then he was like, we've got to come home. But he went for ice cream because he was like, well, I'm in the chair now. He's like, I've shit myself in the chair. It's going to get really messy when I transfer back in the car. But now he's like, she wants ice cream. We got to go get ice cream. So he's like wheeling there with shit, like just squelching around. And
that's so the things that you like just do when you're paralyzed. But that's the worst.
yeah,
That's
I
the
know
worst.
it is crazy. In fact, there's a disturbing amount of comments in our from our viewers that are saying that, for example, I don't want to kick the bucket yet, but I can absolutely understand if my ability to actually live rather than merely exist is taken from me, then my desire to continue living may evaporate. That's a fair statement, I guess. But there are some other comments that were a little bit darker. I feel like, again, if anyone is really struggling, there are some places to reach out. I would, I don't really know off the top of my hand those resources, but yeah, for sure. Like, it's tough. It is tough if you're, there. Then, but maybe we can lighten the mood with some. So anyway, I was going back to this. I was at the wedding, and again, so I was prepared for the wedding, but then obviously I got there late, dodging the bullet of like pooing myself, and I was just unprepared. And I remember thinking, again, hindsight's 2020. I've actually got another really interesting thing to tell you. At the wedding, for some reason, I was unprepared for just the huge social marathon that it is. There's so many people that I haven't seen for ages, and they're like, "Hey, Fredo, hey, how you doing?" And when people come up to you like, "What have you been up to?" And I'm like, "Oh, not much." And I realized that was such the worst thing you can say, not much. I really wish I'd been like, bloody everything, mate. I've been trying to conquer outer space and inner space. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, I'm really capable of being very, very social, but I was unprepared because of the shit thing and turning up late, and I was a bit flustered. I was just unprepared. And then I get influenced a lot by podcasts I listen to. And because I have a 5-year streak of elective sobriety, a podcast I listened to was like, oh, it's nice to reintroduce alcohol every now and then just to remind yourself of, why you're sober. So I was like, oh, you know what? I'll have a glass of Prosecco. So my first ever glass of Prosecco in 5 years. And then I was like, oh, bloody hell. Like that hit me quite hard. And I was like, well, I'm a bit tipsy. And I did not like it. And I thought, everyone else is using this wonderful social lubricant to just, chat, and they're all having a drink, and I'm the only one that's not having a drink. And I had a drink for the first time in 5 years, and I did not like it, and it did not help me socialize. It made me feel a little bit lightheaded and really tired. I started yawning loads, and I was like, "Oh, what is wrong with me?" And I was just yawning, and I remember thinking, "Oh, I don't like this." And then I remember thinking, I want this to wear off. I don't, And I remember thinking, I'm not yawning at this conversation. I'm yawning almost, I don't know what the word is, but just constantly.
Yeah. I yawn when I drink too. And that's why I don't like it. Like, it just makes me tired. Like when I used to drink fast, in order to get drunk, like when I was in university or something, then you don't yawn. You like break past that point. You're like, I'm basically poisoning my brain at this point so that I can have some more fun. That's my view anyway. But when you just drink a little bit, it's basically like, we're going to just depress all of your like, reflexes, and all of your brain cells are going to be a little lazy, and you probably need a little bit more oxygen because you can't think totally straight. And so I yawn so much too.
Mm.
So yeah, I definitely, it's not my thing. It's not my thing for sure.
Yeah. And again, it was such a beautiful, lovely time. And I had a really, really fun time. But the next day, I had a gummy. And then I was like, oh, why didn't I have a gummy? Like at the wedding, I feel great. It's like,
Yeah.
that would have been the best. That would have been my own personal social lubricant. I would have been
Yeah.
so much more present and so much more inquisitive, when speaking to people. And even Chris, like, she was like, because she had a gummy, and she was like, are you having one? I was like, no. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah, no, I'm good. And
And
she
then
was
you
like,
like,
yeah.
and then you went to the wedding and drank, and you didn't have as much fun because you didn't have a gummy.
Again, hindsight's always 2020 though, Britt. Like, if I had have gone back and had a gummy, it would have been great. But yeah. Anyway, so I kind of just it was interesting how, if I could just, and it was really frustrated me because, like, a wedding is such a great place. It's like, oh, next time I'll do it better. You can't go back because it's a it's not like I
No.
go out every weekend. This was a beautiful social interaction, or an opportunity to socialize with so many people and just be a little bit more present with them, rather than just almost like trying to survive the social
Yeah.
marathon. And it was a bit of a shame, but it was a great wedding. I loved it.
It's so interesting that with the social marathon thing, and when people ask you like, what have you been up to? It's so hard to know what to share. Like, because a lot of people, it depends on what their identity is, right? Like my husband will 100% share that he got a promotion at work, that like he's having HR issues with like people, that like this is what's happening with the budget at work. Like that's what he's going to share. And I'm going to be like, Jacob had a boxing, thing that I went to, that I got to watch him spar at, and me and Jamie went to a concert, and like, I'll share almost always things that I'm doing in like my personal life, and my husband will always share things that are happening like in his like professional life, and then other people will share things that they're doing like sports wise. And I really think it like allows you to see what somebody's identity is when like the first thing that they share. And when you read people's bios, it's like that too. It's like people will have specific things in their bio about like how many kids they have, or what they like to eat or cook or whatever. And then other people will be all of their professional accomplishments. But when you have a disability, sometimes it's like, especially if you don't like work full time, because I'm in that boat too. Like I don't have a full time job. So that's not like my identity necessarily. So always like trying to like, especially if people open with that, like, then I'm always like, I feel a little like under accomplished or something. I don't know if you feel that way when you're like, what have you been up to? And you're like, well, sitting at home most of the day, eating
Yeah.
healthy, working out, and kind of helping some people with disabilities. But it feels, especially with like what society thinks is like success, I feel like sometimes I feel a little underaccomplished when I have those conversations with people.
But that's my point. I should have, like, again, hindsight's 2020, man. I
Yeah.
really wish I could go back and redo it. But I could have went in with such a different attitude. Like, I could have had a canned response, like, what you've been up to. Oh, I've just lost 5 kilos. I'm getting shredded. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
you have so much stuff.
yeah. And a lot of people go to like the last thing you shared on social media. So a lot of people are like, hey, I heard you like swimming. I'm like, oh yeah, that's. I mean, it's very nice.
Yeah.
It's a good opener, and I'm like, oh yeah, but I don't really want to talk about swimming. I swim 3 times a week. It's something. It's not like I've just discovered swimming, but it's the first
Yeah.
time I've shared on social media for a while, especially at Instagram. So I understand where people want to make that connection. But yeah, I just really wish I'd had a better response than what you've been up to. Oh, not much, because it's just so lame. It's such a conversation killer.
Yeah.
And like, so I actually, like, this is a little bit embarrassing. I went into the toilet and I was like, I asked ChatGPT. I'm like, ChatGPT, I'm at a wedding. I really need some prompts on like social interaction. And I felt a bit lame asking, the AI, but it's like, oh, ask people, yeah, how many weddings have you been to this year? Stuff like that. I was like, oh, it's a great question. I was like, how many weddings have you been to this year?
Oh,
Oh
that's a
yeah,
good
I went to
way.
3 weddings, and I was like, oh, this is probably my favorite wedding I've been to this year. And it was interesting to get, once you get the ball rolling, it's quite easy. But for some reason, you get stuck in that, like, someone comes up to you, and it's like small talk, and I don't like small talk. And I was like, Chat GPT, how can I like turn small talk into interesting conversations? And a lot of my friends have had kids recently, so I was like, hey, what's the best piece of advice that you've been given as a new parent? And resoundingly, it was just not to worry, and that was really lovely. And then I got people chatting with each other, and it was really great. But yeah, in the end, I was I was all right. But it was interesting how unprepared I was. And then yeah, so if I can give anyone any tips before going to a big social occasion, prepare yourself. Have some
Yeah.
anecdote. Have some like pocket responses. Like,
Yeah.
be prepared. Someone's going to be like, "What have you been up to?" And have an interesting, answer prepared that can roll into interesting conversation.
Yeah, I think this just gave me an idea for like a wedding. My brother's gonna get married sometime. So, but having like conversation starter cards like at tables, like kind of like the game that
Mm,
you and I have, because that would be so cool. Like you normally, I feel like at a wedding, try to mix people up so that there's like conversation. Sometimes people put people together from certain families so that they're not mixed up. But I love when I sit with new people at weddings because I'm a very social person. So I really love to learn new things about people I meet. So that would be a good idea for a wedding. Just to be like, yeah, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten? Or what's the like worst piece of advice? Or what's the worst experience that you ever had like in school? Or something that like gets people talking about relatable experiences because we've all gone to school and we've all been given advice from people and things that everybody can talk about. Like don't specifically ask a very like, tailored niche question. Just there have some general ones, but that's a good idea. And even just like,
mm,
yeah, like you said, preparing for when you go into a social marathon, some of the answers or things that you might want to talk about. Because I think that's no different than going into a networking meeting. Like you would never go into a networking event and not think about the things you're going to talk about in terms of like what you're networking on, like whether it's your business or like volunteerism or the nonprofit, whatever it is that you're networking on, you would come in prepared. So
mm. I've also got a funny story. So I applied for a job. A little update for everyone, by the way. Everyone
yeah.
who was been following my little journey. I didn't get that job that I applied for because they said that it was because I wasn't fluent in French. Although when I spoke French during the interview, it gave me the impression that it was good enough. And I didn't get a French competency test either. They just said, "I'm really sorry, but we're looking for someone else." And it made me think that, like, because of the stairs, it's such an easy. Again, maybe it's something to do with my insecurity about being in a wheelchair, but it's probably like, well, how are we going to get the guy up the stairs? Well, maybe we'll just tell him, his French isn't good enough. So I didn't get that job, which I was a little bit disappointed at. But then I applied for another job, and I saw a lady at the wedding who I know like runs the company that I applied for. And I applied for the job, and I just didn't get a response. And I thought it was a little bit rude, like I sent a CV, I sent a cover letter, and just didn't get the job. So this lady comes over, and she was smoking outside, and we struck up a conversation, and there's me sort of trying to be like, oh, blah blah, And I was like, and I'd done this bit of artwork that is up in her house. Yeah, I've never met the lady, but it was a commission that someone else had got me to do. It was very weird. And I started the conversation with that. And then I led into, oh, I heard that you guys are looking for an ad.
Uh-oh. I don't know if I'm frozen or just Fred. Can you guys still see me?
Are we back in the room? Can you
Yeah,
hear
we're
me?
back. Yeah. I just wasn't
Oh,
sure
did it
whether
cut
that was
out?
me. Yeah, you cut out.
All right. Well, I'll go back to, I was talking to this woman, and she was part of the company that I applied for a
Yeah.
job with.
Yeah.
So I said to her, oh, I heard that you guys are looking for an admin assistant. I applied for that job. And she just said, oh, but you wouldn't be able to get up the stairs. And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't know your office was up the stairs. She's like, yes, well, and I was like, I never heard back from your office when I applied. She was like, oh, that's a shame, but you wouldn't have been able to get the job anyway, and just brushed it off. Like, and I just thought,
Oh,
that's really harsh, man. Like, the stairs are obviously an obstacle that I find living in a small town. A difficulty finding a job.
yeah.
2 places now that have offices upstairs just haven't employed me. Again, one of them possibly because I wasn't fluent in French. But then another one didn't even reply to me, which I thought was really rude. And I thought that I would just bring that up because it was an interesting conversation. How she was just so blunt, like, "Oh, well, you wouldn't be able to get to the office anyway," like as in a justification of just ghosting me, like so.
Yeah. I think it's the dismissal. Like I had almost an identical situation, but with Joe, not like an potential employer, but we were talking about hiking because Jamie's friends' parents are very athletic. And she goes, "Mom, can I ask them to go hiking with them when they go next time?" And I was like, absolutely. Like that would be super fun. And then I was talking to Joe and I was like, Jamie really wants to go hiking. So that's like probably something that maybe you can look into, you can do with her. And then I was like, we could probably look into some, accessible hikes too. And then Joe goes, "You can't hike. You're in a wheelchair." Like it was so annoying, like the dismissal. And I was like, "What do you mean I can't hike?" He's like, "Well, accessible hikes are not hikes." And I was like, oh, I was so mad. I was like, "Hey, fuck you. They are two hikes. They're different levels of like intensity for sure. But just because you're not like climbing a mountain doesn't mean I can't fucking hike." Like I was so mad, and I'm like swearing here because that's how mad I was. But
I can tell.
it wasn't that he was like, it wasn't the sentiment, it was the dismissal. It was just like, "You can't do that." And when somebody like automatically just like goes, "Yeah, we wouldn't take you. You can't do that. That's not a you thing." Like that's like, okay. And like, it just feels so horrible when somebody like automatically does that. And so I was like, "You suck, Joe." So everybody comment "Joe sucks" on here. And then I'm going to show them and I'll be like, "You were wrong and I was right." But anyway, I was just like, that is horrible when people dismiss you. Cause that's that is the like the thing that hurts, not that you didn't get the job. If they had said, "You know what, you're so qualified, but we're just not sure how we're going to figure out this accessibility thing," or like whatever it is, you understand the reasoning behind a company not necessarily employing you for an accessibility issue. But when they dismiss it as like, "Yeah, you can't do that anyway, so why would we even look at you?" You're just like, "Okay, F you. I'm going to tell everybody not to use your business then."
Well, yeah, I mean, she was very blunt, but at the same time, she made a good point. She's like, we rent the building. It's not like we can it's not like we can change the building. We just rent the building. It's like, it's an inaccessible building in
Talk
a
to the
mountain town.
landlord then. Talk to the landlord. Go and see if the landlord would maybe want to do it. I hate when people do that.
Yeah. I think I was just annoyed that they didn't reply to my email. I was like,
Yeah.
it's good to be like, "Hey, sorry,
Rude. Yeah, exactly, Shazam. Rude.
yeah, it is a little bit rude, to be honest."
Rude in all caps.
And then the conversation took a really unexpected turn because she was like, she's a friendly lady. I don't want to, yeah, but she was just like, so, because she'd had a few drinks. She was like, I hear you're into mushrooms. And I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, you live in a small town when people that you don't know you've done artwork for, and they're the owner of a company, and they've heard you've done mushrooms. That's a small town.
And I was like, I get that my artwork has a slight psychedelic tinge to it, but yeah, she was like, "Oh, are you into like microdosing and stuff?" And I there's me like going like, "Hey, maybe you can give me a job," and she's like, "Hey, maybe you can get me some drugs."
Oh my God. Be like, "Well, I'm just not really sure where I can get the drugs because, I don't really own the drugs and I'm just sort of the middleman."
It was funny though, because she was saying, "Oh, I'd love to take mushrooms. Like maybe you and I could do it together." And I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "Look, with all due respect, I'm quite particular about people I get high with, and if you want some mushrooms, now is the perfect time of year. With your able body, you can go out and look in the fields. There's loads of them at the moment. So yeah, go ahead and pick them." But no, I was polite. I wasn't. I'm exaggerating for comedic effect now, but at the time it was a very amicable exchange. It was just, it was just interesting. I was like, there's me thinking that you might give me a job, and she's like, "Oh, let's talk psychedelics," and she was like, "I used to be well into it when I was younger and I haven't done it in ages," and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And it was just one of those conversations that was like, I don't, even though I like that, it bores me when people kind of talk about that, like, and they think that I'm going to reciprocate with like enthusiasm. Oh, wicked. Yeah, let's talk about, I don't know. Something that I like to do and something that I do talk about online, but it's not something that I would really enjoy talking about with strangers. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just,
That's an odd topic to bring up at a wedding, I think. But yeah, that whole dismissal thing, it just, because I think that's society today, where if you just don't ask, like ghosting people that you're dating, who does that? Like who can do that? I never, like I could never do that.
it's very common. It's very common.
I know, I just,
Yeah, when I was dating before I met Chris, yeah, I got ghosted a few times and I thought it was so rude.
so
But then
rude.
someone explained it to me like, that's just what people do nowadays. If you get
Yeah.
ghosted, and there's me like, hey, you didn't reply to my message. You're like, oh, that's utter cringe. I can't believe you sent that. If you get ghosted, that's their way of saying they're not interested. And I'm like,
No,
what? Like,
that's
and yeah. So
sorry.
yeah.
That's that's a pathetic. I'm sorry. This is like this is me being very judgy. So I'm just gonna put on my judgmental hat right now and no, this is judgmental, Brittany. But like part of society right now that is too afraid or doesn't have the balls to be accountable and just go to somebody and say, you know what? It's just not going to work out. This is something about your personality that I didn't really like, or this is where we didn't clash, or where we clashed and where we didn't click. Like that's a weakness, I think, in society where like you just can't go. Like I hate that about kids now. Like Jacob will be like need to go say something to his teacher and I'm like, go say it to your teacher. Like I am not sure what you're struggling with about this situation. Well, I don't know. I just it feels awkward. And like go to your teacher and be like, I didn't get the assignment done because I was lazy and whatever it is, just own up to it and say it. And if you're too uncomfortable to do that, then you probably shouldn't be in high school. Like I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, well, I was told it's just the way of the world now. If you, yeah, it's like, what's the first time you've been ghosted? And I'm like, well, in the dating kind of scene, yeah, it is. And I don't really like being, and yeah, it's just, I think it's just common now for people to just ghost people. And yeah, it's not very pleasant. It doesn't feel very good. You're like, oh, well, I thought that. Again, when you're applying for a job, that's really bloody unprofessional. Like, really reply to my email, you know?
I know. It's just in like businesses when you email them. Like I emailed a drywall business probably like 3 months ago. They never got me back to me. And I'm like, okay, you don't want my business? Like, just be like, no, we're too busy, whatever it is. But I'm like, why have an email address if you don't answer your emails? And if you can't answer your emails and you're that busy, like, then you need to hire an administrator or an admin assistant or something. Like I was just like, yeah, it's just dumb. I hate businesses that do that. I don't like it when people do that in the dating world. I just think it's social inadequacies, James. That's what it is. Social inadequacies.
Exactly. I do have something else to share before we end, just because it might interfere with our schedule. But next Tuesday, I am remarkably going back to rehab.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about this. And what for?
They try to make me go to rehab, and I said yes. I said yeah.
No.
Let's return. So I'm returning to MGen in Evian, where I first started my rehab, and because basically every time I go to the doctor, they say, "Look, you're taking too much oral baclofen," and I'm like, "I get it, but like it's the only thing that pacifies my spasms to a manageable level." So, and I said, "Well, maybe I could speak to a specialist," and I don't know if it was lost in translation, but she was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I think that's a great idea for you to speak to a specialist." And then all of a sudden I'm enrolled in day like Hopital du Jour
Like
rehab.
outpatient. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay. That's not really what I meant. Like I didn't want to go back to rehab. I just wanted to speak to someone about, but I thought this is a really good opportunity. Like I don't have anything on at the moment. So I'm going to go back to rehab twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Tuesday afternoons. So hopefully that won't interrupt our schedule, but I will definitely make sure. But my goal, I think, why not? If you're going to have a lofty goal, I think I'd love to wean off baclofen, because one of the things that I guess I'm tethered to this drug. I'm tethered to this, 3 pills every 6 hours, and I don't like it, So I think it would be really cool to, maybe it's a lofty goal, but I think it's worthy if I can wean off it. I think a lot of people do wean off it. And the people that I've heard anecdotally, they're like, it doesn't really make that much difference anyway. My spasms are just as bad as they were before. So I'm going to make it my mission. I'm going to speak to the professionals and see what they say.
Yeah. I definitely think it's possible. And I honestly think that I could probably wean entirely off of baclofen now. If I didn't want, if I was willing to go through the discomfort of like the nerve pain and the, like, cause it makes like, it's hard to describe when you like lower your baclofen, but it like makes like, because your central nervous system is like depressed. So then it's like wakes up and it's like, everything is just like, I call it, I'm like crunchy. It feels like everything is just like, like those papers that if you crumple them, they're the sounds they make. That's what I like equate it to, like what my body feels like everything is just sharpened and edgier, and like it's just uncomfortable for a while, and then it gets fine. Like I've gone from half of what I was taking before. I'm on half of what I was taking before. And it took me a really long time to get there. But I'm at the point now, because the lower you go on your baclofen dose, then like if you take four, like I was taking 4 pills, then you can go down 1 whole pill. And then I was taking 3 pills, and to go from 3 pills to 2 pills, you can go down 1 whole pill. But to go
Is this
from
per
2 pills,
day?
it's like per week or something like that.
No,
And
but were you
then
taking 4 pills per day?
no, 4 pills every 6 hours.
Oh, wow.
I was
Yeah. Oh,
taking a
wow.
lot.
That's more
Yeah.
than me then.
I
Yeah.
was taking a lot. So then I went down to 3 pills every 6 hours, and now I'm 2 pills every 6 hours. And now that I'm at 2 pills every 6 hours, you can only go down half a pill, because the lower the dose gets, you have to go incrementally, like with the percentage of the dosage, which gets smaller and smaller as the dose gets smaller. So then it'll be a half a pill, and then after that, it's like a quarter of a pill. So it's just annoying to break the pills in half, and they don't come in smaller, like what's it, like the pill
Yeah,
size.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, so that's mostly why I haven't done it, but it's definitely possible. But if I'm interested for us to follow your journey with this little experiment to see if it's effective.
Yeah, I just want to address this comment. Botox has controlled my spasms. So I did get Botox every 3 months. Is it 3 months? Every 4 months, whatever. I got Botox in my legs. It was interesting. I enjoyed, because the French healthcare system is phenomenal. So when I say this, people are going to be like, what? But there would be like, they'd send a medical taxi to come pick me up from my house, drive me all the way to the hospital where the guy would administer the Botox, all for free, and then they drive me all the way home. And then even when I go to rehab, they take me there. It's like an hour either way. It's like hundreds of thousands of euros in taxi fees, but it's absolutely brilliant. I don't have to drive there myself. But yeah, so I had Botox and it was really good. But the problem was they said they couldn't keep administering Botox unless I was using it functionally. So first of all, I numbed the spasticity to stop my legs crossing over when I was like walking in the parallel bars. So when I was like manipulating my spasms to put one foot in front of the other in the early days when I thought I was going to walk again, I basically did a really cool parlor trick between the parallel bars. I could keep my weight up, and then just, shuffle one foot in front of the other. It looked really good, but it wasn't yeah. So anyway, and when I said to the doctor, I was like, oh, I no longer walk in the parallel bars. He said, well, I can't really give you Botox again. And yeah, so it did help like a lot, but at the same time I was on baclofen as well. And yeah, so I'd love to wean off baclofen, because like I say, I do think about I keep going back to it, but that experience I had when I took the mushrooms of like what if the power went out forever, and this sort of post world, if the internet went down or whatever, I would be screwed. I'm tethered to this drug and I don't like it. So I'd love to wean it. I'd love to get away from it.
Do you take a bladder pill too, or no?
No.
That's the one that I'm tethered to, that, because if I don't take a anticholinergic, my bladder, like I'll just pee every 5 minutes. Like it's terrible. And they're like, as you age, they have risks for like increased risk for dementia and stuff like that. I do think that there's a lot of like, you know, prerequisites in terms of like how healthy you are, in terms of how high your risk is for that. So yeah, as I get older, I'm like, do I want to pee my pants or lose my mind? Not really sure. Like, but peeing my pants all the time would probably make me lose my mind anyway. So let's
Right.
see. I don't know. Yeah, I think that there's like, we have to weigh the benefits. The cost benefit like analysis is one that I think everybody with a spinal cord injury has to do. And I think we should be doing that before we're put on the medication, because they just put us on it instead of us being like, how do we manage this without the medication? And then the medication is the last resort. We get put on the medication because, and I hope this isn't true, but I heard this from my friend that it's easier for the medical staff to do your care when you're on these medications because your spasticity is not as bad. You're not peeing your pants all the time. There's less incontinence to manage. So they put you on it so that the medical staff doesn't have to do all of these things for you. And then you have to wean off of it when you leave the hospital, which that's an awful thing if that's true, because I think that we should be learning to manage without the medication. And then if it's a last resort, then we get put on it. But because I hate having to wean off it, because then you get so used to it. Oh, I'm on Toviaz. So I have tried many different ones over the years. I was on oxybutynin for a long, long time. And then it was actually my dentist who alerted me that my gums were unhealthy because of the dry mouth that medication was causing. And she's like, you know, if you don't find a different medication, then your gums are going to really be unhealthy. So then I looked for a different medication. I tried a couple different ones. I was on like Solifacin or something like that. There was a couple different ones, but they caused constipation. And then I landed on Toviaz. And it's fine. I'm on 4 milligrams once a day. It's just one pill that I take in the morning, and it seems to work fine. So,
And how does that pill help?
it is it's an anticholinergic, which is a cholinergic receptor is the thing that causes your muscle to spasm when you have a bladder contraction, and it is a competitive what's it called? It competes for the cell. What's it called? I can't think of it. Where the cholinergic thing attaches to make a spasm, it attaches there. So it just competes with that and stops the spasms from happening as often. That's I think how almost all anticholinergics work. Well, actually, no, I don't think so. It's a competitive inhibitor. That's what it's called, the competitive inhibitor. So it just, yeah, it doesn't allow what normally would happen to happen as often.
So, like, how does it affect you in your day-to-day life? You just pee your pants less?
Yeah. So like it makes what actually happens, I think, is it makes my bladder spasms less intense. Because normally, like when a bladder spasm happens, the cholinergic neurotransmitter has to attach to the cell membrane, and then it has to activate it to make your bladder spasm. And because some of it is being attached by this medication, or it is being attached to the cell membrane from this medication, then only like half of the receptors are attaching with the actual thing that's causing the spasm. So it allows my bladder pressure to stay low enough that my sphincter pressure is higher than my bladder pressure, so I don't pee my pants as often. But if that doesn't happen, then my spasms happen more often, and they're more intense. So then my bladder pressure is higher. I pee my pants more often. But yeah, there's almost every bladder medication is an anticholinergic, except for Myrbetriq, which is a different class of medications, and it's like a newer one, but it's not as effective. And a lot of people take an anticholinergic paired with Myrbetriq, and it seems to work really well. But yeah, I tried coming off of it once, and I have had friends that have been successful weaning off of it, but they had to go really, really slowly, like, you know, a quarter of a pill for a really long time. And then their bladder just seemed to train itself to not spasm as intensely. But yeah, I don't really feel like going through that.
Do you know what was interesting? Because I hadn't drunk alcohol in 5 years. One of the things I noticed was, oh my God, when I needed to go to the toilet, I was like, I really, really need to go to the toilet. Like
Yeah.
I've spoken before, which I'm very, very fortunate that if I need to go to the toilet, I can hold it. But I was
Yeah.
like, I cannot. I feel like I'm really going to piss myself. And actually, I wore a nappy to the wedding because I shit myself in the morning, right? So I was like, I'm going to, you know, what's the word? Take out some poo insurance policy. So of course I'm going to wear a nappy. So when I was like desperate and I felt like I was going to wee, it wasn't that bad because like I was wearing some protective underwear. But at the same time, I was like, wow, like this is the urge to wee is so much more having alcohol in my system than just like water, because I normally just drink exclusively water.
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting insight, you know?
Yeah. It definitely, I do think alcohol makes your it's like a bladder irritant. So it can make your bladder spasms more intense. On that note though, I definitely have to pee. Can anybody see my
Yeah.
cheeks getting red? That's what happens to me when I'm like, I have to pee. I'm like, my face gets super red.
Yeah,
So
we're 5 minutes over. Let's bring it home, Brittany.
let's bring it
Anything you want to
home.
say before we go?
I don't know. I don't think so. I
Okay.
can't wait to talk about the devotee next time because that's an interesting conversation. Thank you, Silky. I don't know how to say your first name, Silky David, for saying Joe sucks. I'm going to show him the comments and be like, I was right, you were wrong, and it was a sucky thing to say that I can't go hiking.
Yeah. But yeah,
And
I
yeah,
just want to
so
thank everyone for listening. We have 35 people watching live, and this has been a really popular episode. There's been comments, so many comments. I know that we don't
so
address all
much
the comments,
engagement.
but we do read them. It's actually very hard to have a conversation and read the comments at the same time, but
It
we do
is.
because we're great. Thank you. And I have to say, one of the reasons why I think this episode was so popular live was because of the provocative title. So you absolutely nailed that. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, Brittany. And let me see if I
Okay.
can end the stream a little bit better than I
Yeah.
did last week.
Yeah. So just leaving the actual like thing. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.